Okay, so good evening, everyone, brothers and sisters of the Dhamma. So tonight's topic is considered very chim topic. It's one of the list of suggested topics by Onjit. He showed me the list, so some of the topics are like meditation, which I've already covered. So I think I just picked this one, conditional arising. So there's another word for it, dependent origination. Some will call it dependent arising. So there are many terms of calling it. So again, just to see a show of hands, how many of you have heard of this topic before? Never. Okay, some of you have. Okay, so this topic again is some controversy. Early on we chanted the qualities of the Dhamma. So one of the qualities is to be seen here and now without delay, and also inviting one to investigate. So with that spirit in mind, we are going to explore this point of view, because this dependent origination has popularly two points of view, two kinds of view. So the first kind is called the three lifetime model. So this is we call this the mainstream model. So all the Buddhist universities, if let's say you want to take any courses, be it a diploma course, degree course, whatever course, they'll probably teach that one, three lifetime model. So the three lifetime model don't really fit into this daily life topic today, because if you want to talk about the Dhamma to be seen here and now without delay, then you cannot afford to wait for the next lifetime. You need to see it here and now. Okay, so there is an alternative explanation where this dependent arising is to be seen every moment, here and now, every moment. So I'll talk more on this second model. And of course, this second model is more popular probably amongst the meditators, not so much among the academic institutions. So that's where we talk about it. Yeah? So today is going to be an academic talk. Hopefully we can translate it into practice and experience. Yeah, I don't want it to be too dry. And of course, this is not examinable. This one you can't take an exam. Okay, and so before we start, why I chose this picture, this diagram, I was first kind of introduced to this dependent arising from my father, my dad. My dad is practicing Tibetan Buddhism. So he bought this, they call this a tanka, that means something like a painting of this picture on the left. And he hung it like at my door, my room. So kind of remind me of samsara. So when I get in or get out, it's like samsara. So the most of the other traditions, not just in Theravada, also in all the other traditions, especially the Tibetan tradition, they will also talk it in terms of the three lifetime model. Okay, so where does the 12 links stand? So if you look at the diagram, you see one big demon holding a wheel, right? So that's like the Lord of Death, either Yama or Mara. And outermost circumference of the wheel, there's like 12 diagrams. So these 12 diagrams represent this dependent arising. So I won't explain the picture in detail. Of course, in the biggest portion of the diagram are the 6 realms of existence in samsara. And of course, in the middle part of the wheel, it talks about the 3 kinds of poisons, right? Greed, hatred, delusion. So that's the very rough explanation. So I shall proceed to discuss what are 12 links and what are 12 dependent or arising factors, condition arising. So first and foremost, why do we need to know this dependent arising? Why? Why do we need to know? Because it is essential for Buddhists to know. It is essential. So I'm just going to briefly read through this particular sutta, this Vera Sutta talks about right view. So if a person wants to have right view as a Buddhist, one should be able to understand this dependent arising. So these are the 4 factors of stream entry which he is endowed. So there are 4 things. And which is the noble method that he has rightly seen and rightly ferreted out through discernment. There is the case where a disciple of the noble ones notices. So there are these 4 things that you should notice. So the first one, when this is, that is. Yeah, it's going to sound a bit profound, but bear with me. Okay, second one, from the arising of this comes the arising of that. So from these first 2 statements, you can tell this, what is called dependent arising. Depending on a certain thing, another thing will arise. Right? So number 3, when this isn't, that isn't. And number 4, when the cessation of this comes, the cessation of that. Okay, so when a certain condition don't arise, then the following condition won't arise. So this is another fanciful way of trying to describe the Four Noble Truths. Another fanciful way of describing the Four Noble Truths. So Four Noble Truths supposed to be very basic for Buddhists, but this is another way of explaining. So the first statement would, when this is, that is. So this is talking about suffering. So later on when we look at the 12 links, they understand, right, what is this statement about. And the link number 2, the arising of this comes from the arising of that. So we talk about the cause of suffering is craving, right? So the second noble truth is the arising causes of the suffering. And number 3 is cessation, when these things don't exist. And the fourth noble truth, when the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. So the path leading to the cessation. So basically these 4 fanciful terms, or the new way of putting the Four Noble Truths. So the takeaway is, you don't have to understand it too much in theory, because this is supposed to be experiential. So you don't have to be a scholar to appreciate what I'm talking about. I'll try to slowly translate the experience later. Okay, so normally dependent origination, they will try to explain in the forward and reverse order. So the forward order is the first 2 truths. When this is, that is, from the arising of this comes from the arising of that. So this is the forward order. And then the other order is called the reverse order, which is number 3 and number 4. With the disappearance of certain factor, then the following factors like a chain reaction, then they kind of disappear. So that's the 3rd and 4th. Okay, so we're going to talk about the forward order and slowly introduce you what are these condition arising. What are the conditions that lead to another condition that lead to another condition. So total there are these 12 conditions. Okay, so number 1, from ignorance as a requisite condition comes fabrication. So ignorance is, as long as we are unenlightened, all of us will have ignorance, so it will condition fabrications. So what are these fabrications? So fabrication is these mental fabrications, verbal and bodily fabrications. So the Pali word is called sankhara. And interestingly, sankhara is the 4th aggregate. 4th aggregate. So we have 5 aggregates, so sankhara is the 4th aggregate. So the Pali for ignorance is avijja, not knowing. So a person without knowing will produce all these things, these aggregates. So as long as we still generate thought, we still have formations, we'll have all this. Okay, then number 2, from fabrications as a requisite condition comes consciousness. So this is an interesting point. So when there is mental fabrication, then there will be awareness. This thing called consciousness. So in the later slides, we'll explain more on this consciousness. So from consciousness as a requisite condition comes name and form. Right? So basically it's a package. When you are aware of something, then you are aware of both mind and matter. You're aware of both mind and matter. So name and form is basically 5 aggregates. Name and form, 5 aggregates. So name is a mental aspect, form is the physical, the materiality aspect. Yeah, so form is the first of the 5 aggregates. It can be broken down into the 4 elements: earth, fire, wind, water. So this is the form. The mental aspect, the name, feeling, right? Feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. So back to the first two. Right? So, so the 5 aggregates, although it comes in a package, but if you want to talk about it in chronological order, then fabrications come first before consciousness. But consciousness don't arise naturally by itself. It depends on various conditions. So this dependent origination is also not very straightforward. It's not very straightforward. It's not like when there's consciousness comes first before this, or consciousness comes first before that. No. Okay. So number 4, from name and form as a requisite condition comes the 6 sense media. So the 6 sense media is basically your eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So these are the 6 senses. In primary school, we learn 5 senses: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. So if you tell the Western scientists 6 sense, then they will think, oh, 6 sense is what? ESP, extra sensory perception. So no, for this, 6 sense is basically your thinking, your imagination, your mind door. So whatever you kind of think of, you experience through your mind. So like what you had for, I don't know, maybe your lunch earlier today, or what you had for breakfast earlier today. So only you can experience with your own mind, your mind door, right? I cannot, other people cannot see for you. So you only can experience it for yourself. Okay, so from the 6 sense media as a requisite condition comes contact. And then contact means, okay, so now I'm going to explain to you what all these terms mean, how this, what's the relation between consciousness, 6 sense media, and contact. Okay, so it comes about like this. So normally they will tell you dependent on your organ, let's say your eye, and dependent on the external object, let's say your screen, your electronic device, could be your computer, your laptop, your phone, whatever it is, dependent on the external object, then eye consciousness will arise. So interestingly, this is the other way around. So you depend on this thing first, your body, your organ, then dependent on the existence of the external object, then eye consciousness arise. Right? And because of these 3 things, the meeting of these 3 things is called contact. So likewise for all the other senses, if you have hearing, right? How does your hearing come about? Because you have your ear organ, your eardrums are working. Hopefully all of us, the ears are working. If not, we won't be attending this Zoom meeting. Our ears are working, right? We have the ear organ, and dependent on external sound, your speakers, right? Your speakers will produce certain vibrations, and these sound waves hit your ear, and ear consciousness arise. So the meeting of these 3 is called contact. And so on and so forth. So we have the nose organ, the tongue, the body, which is your nervous system, and the mind. So the mind is basically your ideas. Whenever you daydream, so this is mind door contact. So you have total 6 senses. Okay, so to explain contact in detail, first we are going to let you know that all of our senses are working all the time. If let's say we are not handicapped in any way, all of our senses are working all the time. But we only can pay attention to one thing at one time. So for example, now you're looking at the screen, right? So you're paying attention to the screen. But you're not paying attention to your heartbeat. So because when I tell you pay attention to your heartbeat, then now you pay attention to your heartbeat, right? So Now there is contact, body sense door contact. You're feeling the heartbeat, right? The nervous system to your chest or whatever it is. So then there is contact, right? But before I mention heartbeat, does it, your heart is still beating, right? It's not that when I never mention your heart word, it's not beating, right? So vice versa, all our senses are working all the time, but we don't pay attention to all of them all the time. We are not omnipresent, or we are not omniscient. We are not omniscient, not omni-aware of everything all the time. So the paying attention to that particular object is called contact. All right, when the three things meet, it's called contact. So what happens after contact? When there is contact, then the conditions comes feeling. So feeling is basically this part of the 5 aggregates again. So feeling is the second aggregate. So feeling is defined as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling. So we have 3 kinds of feeling. So if let's say you look at the screen here, you might like what you see, you may not like what you see, or you find it neutral. Or sometimes your eyes move to different objects and you have some likes, some dislikes, and jumping around, right? So this is called feeling. Okay, so from number 1 to number 6, it is basically a kind of reflex action. We can't do anything about it. There's nothing we can do about it. And so number 7 is the cause of suffering. So from feeling as a requisite condition comes craving. So if you want to talk about Four Noble Truths, what is the cause of suffering? Craving. So number 1 to number 6, you cannot stop it. You cannot say, okay, I want to stop suffering. I don't see, don't hear, don't think, don't do anything. No, right? We should have some of the senses working. Even if we close our eyes, we put this ear muffler, we block our ears, right? We block everything. They're still thinking. We cannot stop the brain. They're still thinking, right? So when there's thinking, then there's also feelings that comes with the contact to the mind. So whatever we imagine, we worry, we fantasize, whatever it is, then there will be craving. Not there will be craving. The untrained mind will react with craving. Right? So number 7 is the self-inflicted kind of suffering. Self-inflicted kind of suffering. Okay, then number 8, from craving results in clinging. So this sustenance and clinging is basically addiction. Addiction. So one good example, so craving can be defined as simply greed or hatred. For now, we just talk about these two, either greed or hatred. So this is the reaction. So if we face unpleasant feeling, the untrained mind will react with anger. You want to push it away, you want to get rid of it, so that is aversion, anger. So that's a kind of craving. And if we face pleasant feeling, nice feeling, something we like, then we will react with greed. I want some more. So that is called greed. So craving is either mostly greed or hatred, these two. Okay, so from craving as a requisite condition comes clinging or sustenance. That means a kind of addiction. So for example, let's say maybe addicts, those can be a smoker or gambler or alcoholic. These are very negative kind of addiction. Negative kind of addiction. Do they know these are bad addictions? Most of them know, they know it's bad. It harms their health, harms their social relationship, harms their finances. They know it's bad. Sometimes they even seek some helpline, but it's still an addiction. It's a clinging. So craving conditions come clinging. So clinging means unable to let go. Right? So when there's craving, then it conditions clinging. Okay, then from clinging as a requisite condition comes becoming. Okay, so becoming here has three kinds of becoming. Either desire realm becoming, that means we enjoy our senses, sense pleasure. So things like I say, during meditation, we like to daydream, right? So if we daydream, that's a sense becoming, clinging to sense pleasure. Clinging to sense pleasure. And the other kind of becoming would be form and formless becoming. So these are the other two kinds of becoming. So total three kinds of becoming. Sensual becoming, form becoming, and formless becoming. So the form and formless becoming are basically the concentrative states. We call it jhanic states, very deep states of concentration. So it kind of produces nice emotional feeling, very pleasant, very peaceful. So it can result in addiction also, result in clinging and becoming. Okay, so so normally form and formless becoming are considered wholesome, wholesome. Then desire becoming is more like half-half. Half-half. It can be a wholesome addiction or unwholesome addiction. So earlier on we give the examples of these certain vices like gambling, drinking, and stuff like that. So these are unwholesome kind of craving and clinging. So it's an unwholesome kind of becoming. So there's also a wholesome kind of becoming, a person who enjoys doing charity, a person enjoys doing volunteer work, doing good deeds. It creates a certain kind of pleasure, certain kind of happiness for them. So they like it. So it's also a kind of becoming, right? So that is the other part. So then the next one, number 10. From becoming as a requisite condition comes birth. So when a person becomes that state of mind, becomes an addict or becomes a volunteer or becomes a meditator, becomes absorbed meditator, whatever it is, then it gives birth to a kind of personality. So this is a very subtle way of looking at it. Okay, some people may take a literal kind of birth, the birth coming from the womb kind of birth. Then number 11, from birth as a requisite condition comes aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and blah, 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 right? So this is the first noble truth, the noble truth of suffering. Normally we talk about suffering as birth, aging, sickness, and death. Clinging, the 5 clinging aggregates is suffering. So when we talk about point number 9, from clinging, right, results in this becoming. So that is also the first noble truth of suffering. And second noble truth of suffering is number 7. When there's craving. Or number 8, from craving results in clinging. So the second noble truth. So later on we'll talk about the third and fourth noble truth. Okay, so at this point of time, anyone has any questions? Who's blur already?
But there is a question from the chat that asks
Okay.
to explain a little bit more on the mind door, the mind and thinking.
Okay, all right. Very good one. Okay, so like our other sense organs, like early on we talked about the eye, right? So that is depending on the sense organ. So for let's say humans, right? Depending on our mind door, so that would be probably our brain. Depending on our mind organ, so that's the brain, and depending on ideas, depending on intellect, depending on ideas. So there's lots of things working all the time, lots of ideas generated in our mind all the time. The brain, the synapses, the electrical currents are always firing all the time. So there's always brain activity, right? So depending on which idea you want to come in contact with, then this we call this mind door consciousness will be obvious. So hopefully that would kind of answer the question. Is BT around? Not around? Okay, never mind. So
Yes,
hopefully
Bante,
that,
I'm
okay,
here.
I
Thank you,
see.
thank you.
Hope it answers your question.
Yeah, my door is a bit difficult for me because um because I follow a meditation type. They talk about my door that close to our heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so sometimes I was a bit confused, and I was a bit hesitate to enter the my door, and then they say that you will see the past life. So
Mm.
yeah, so this is something I'm quite not quite sure about this. So I think it's just because of my mind, the brain try to rationalize the mind door.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just would like to have more like example on how these three things that connected.
Okay, all right, okay.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, sure. Yeah, so these are the mind or mind and thinking. Yeah. So thinking is basically we will think all the time. So if let's say if we do nothing, if let's say we just relax and do nothing, will the mind be working? The mind will be working, right? So we will have thoughts, right? So that's thinking. We call these mental formations, old karmas ripening. Yeah. So the number two, fabrication. Another translation would be karmic formations. Karmic formation. So if we do nothing and just relax, then this thinking will arise by itself. These are old karmas ripening. But if let's say we deliberately plan, deliberately think, we need to think of ideas, generate ideas, think of something. What's your opinion? So you deliberately think of something, then that is intentional thinking. So there's craving involved. Craving involved. So that's number 7, intentional kind of thinking. So this craving will push again this mental fabrication. Yeah. So the mind door is basically the organ. Some, if you're scientific, then you talk about the brain. If you're not so physical, then we talk about some people want to talk about the heart base or the mind base. So wherever it is doesn't matter so much. So there's organ that sort of perceive these phenomena. So we call this the mind door. And then the mind would be these 4 aggregates. Yeah? We talk about mind and matter. Mind and matter. All right, so hopefully that answers. Then there's another question. What's the difference between clinging and becoming? Is becoming suffering? Okay. All right, so this is a very interesting question. So this whole process, this number 1 to number 12, is the analysis of this psychology of becoming, psychology of being. Why do you experience you are you? In Buddhism, we always talk about try to achieve non-self. Try to achieve non-self. Why is it so? It's because when there is I, there's a self, and I will experience pain. I will experience old age. I will experience aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, and stuff like that. But if the I is gone from the equation, then who is experiencing old age, sickness, death? Right. So this is the issue. Okay. So one good example is we take a look at the Buddha. We always use the Buddha as an example. When the Buddha, let's say, he attained enlightenment, he said he has reached the deathless state. Right, he claimed he reached the deathless state. But physically, did the Buddha go through old age, sickness, and passing away? Yeah, the Buddha passed away at 80 years old, right? So he still need to physically pass away. So there's sort of physical death. So this deathless state is the mental deathless state. When a person has achieved egolessness, then they won't experience this aging, sickness, and death in the mind. So this is what they're talking about. Okay, so when we talk about becoming and suffering, right, and clinging, so how does this work? When there is craving, then the rest will come like naturally, like a chain reaction. Okay, I give an example. How does this becoming come about? Okay, let's say if you are attending this Zoom session right now, what is your role here? So your role here is a student, right? You're an audience, you're a listener, right? So because of your eye contact or ear contact, then you generate some kind of thinking, then there is a kind of becoming, a personality. So let's say I ask you to think of someone else, maybe your family members, let's say your parents. Then the roles is changed already. Then you become a child. Let's say you think of another family member, then your role will change, right? Then you think of your colleague, then your role will change. And you think of your, I don't know, maybe your friend, then your role will change. So different contact, yeah, your mind door contact, yeah, you visualize or imagine or whatever, dramatize certain scenario, then there is birth, aging, sickness, and death in the drama. Or the good and bad times you have with that person. So this is the ups and downs of that drama. Either you find suffering or you find pleasure in that relationship. So that is mini samsara. Right, the samsara going on in our mind all the time. So it's because of this becoming. Then there is this, how do you call it, suffering. Yeah, so the other question, yes, in Chinese it's called the 12因缘, 12因缘. So this is the forward order. Okay, then there's another one in the chat. I started loving kindness meditation 2 weeks ago and would feel calm and peaceful after 20-minute session. Therefore, I would look forward practice. Could you please elaborate how meditation could be an addiction and what I should be mindful of? Thank you. Okay, right. So earlier on we talked about the three kinds of becoming, right? Form and formless kind of becoming, being a meditative state kind of becoming. So if a person do achieve concentrative states, it may lead to becoming. So the way out of this clinging would be the reflection of impermanence. And a lot of times, I think many meditators, if let's say they do not reach concentrative states, they may end up most of the time in the sensual becoming. Like most meditation objects, if you do not go in the middle way, you will slant to the extremes. Things like earlier on you talked about loving kindness meditation. If let's say your loving kindness is mixed with a bit of selfishness, then it isn't loving kindness anymore. It becomes personal affection. I only wish my family members well. Or I wish, let's say you have a crush or you fall in love with somebody, and you meditate, then you fall deeper in love, right? So that is another kind of extreme. So it becomes a becoming. And becomes a becoming. So it becomes a sensual becoming, then the mind will create lots of dramas, yeah? And you have these ups and downs in that drama. So there's birth, aging, sickness, and death, and stuff like that in the mind. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question. Okay, so shall I proceed on?
Sorry,
Okay.
Bhante. There was a question actually from Zheng just now that asked whether there's a clear difference between becoming and birth. So it's becoming more
Becoming,
of the process towards birth.
yeah,
Like what was
becoming is more like the, how do you call it? You become that personality. You come into existence. So that's called becoming. You come into existence. So once you come into existence, one will experience all the ups and downs in life, right? Birth, aging, sickness, and death. So that birth could be a mental kind of birth. It could also be a physical kind of birth. That means the childhood labor kind of birth, right? So that is the for number 10. Okay. So if you want to talk about the here and now, then we talk about the mental one. Mental one. Every moment you can see. If you want to talk about wait until next lifetime, then very hard to practice. Very hard to see this for yourself. Yeah. Okay. So hopefully that answers. There's still one more in the chat. Okay, so they replied, thank you. Okay, so I move on to the next slide. So now we talk about problems. We're going to talk about solution. I won't leave you dry and hanging and say, okay, you only suffer only lah. Yeah, so I will give you a solution also, or rather the Buddha actually gave the solution. So this is the reverse order. So the reverse order is very interesting. It starts off from the top. From the remainderless fading and cessation of ignorance comes the cessation of fabrication. And then from cessation of fabrication, and you cease this, and once you cease consciousness, you cease name and form, so on and so forth, all the way till you cease suffering. So this reverse order is actually meant for, we call this a top-down approach. That means from an enlightened person perspective. So if a person already reached enlightenment, that means they have no more ignorance. Once they don't have ignorance, then they won't have all these issues. But how about unenlightened people? Where do we start from? Yeah, where do we start from? So for the ground-up approach, there is another method to do it. I will show you later. Ground-up approach, again, we tackle from number 7. Ground-up approach, we tackle this craving. From feeling, right, arises craving. So how do you tackle craving? So this is the ground-up approach. You always try to overcome craving. We cannot straight away, I want to tackle ignorance. Right? If it's so easy, then all of us got enlightened already. So we tackle craving first. So once the craving reduces, then the becoming reduces, the sense of ego reduces, then the suffering reduces, then slowly, then you get to understand the truth, understand this deeper sense of peace. And it's a long journey. It's not like you just reflect for a while, then you get to know the truth. Maybe for a few individuals, but majority of people require like a duration of time. Or some people many lifetimes. Yeah, so I'm going to carry on. So now this is the analysis. It's like standard definition for each link. Earlier on, I give a brief explanation. What is ignorance? What is fabrication? And what are all these terms, right? But normally, if you want to know the standard definition of the terms, we go to the Vibhangas. So there's Paticca Samuppada Vibhanga Sutta. So there's a sutta that analyzes each of the terms. So it kind of gives like a standard definition. So again, a quick, brief run through so that it won't bore you to death. So it starts from the opposite way. It starts from number 12 to number 1. Starts from number 12 to number 1. So hopefully it's more relatable. Okay, so number 12 would be aging and death. So aging would be aging, wrinkling, graying. So I think this one most people can understand. If you cannot understand, do let me know. Do type in the chat. So I think for aging is very obvious. For death also could be quite obvious. anyone passing away, breaking up of the body. The ones in yellow, very interesting, break up of the aggregates. So this one could have alternative interpretation. So breaking up of the aggregates could be the mental aggregates. So the aggregates can arise and pass away. Yeah, like right now, if let's say you are looking at the screen, that's your eye consciousness, right? You're using a certain fabrication to produce this awareness through the eye. And you have certain perception of the words you're looking at the screen, or you have certain feelings to the words or the picture, whatever it is. So let's say our attention switched to something else. So the whatever you see or whatever you perceive to be seeing will need to pass away first before the other attention arises. Right? The other attention need to give birth. And give birth to the other attention. Right? So it's always arising and passing. So one short experiment we can do is the finger pointing experiment, which we've done. Whoever attended my class before, let's say we point our finger up. You may not want to do it, but if you want to do it, that's fine. Basically, is to locate where is your attention now. What are you paying attention to now? Can you locate your attention? Is it to the screen, to where? Is it at the screen all the time? Is it up all the time? Yeah. So attention is always changing, right? So don't have to worry. That's not attention deficit disorder. It's arising and passing of your aggregates. It's natural. Yeah. So it's always changing. It's always impermanent. All right. So this is always the birth and the passing of the aggregates. So this is more like the here and now kind of observation. But if you want to talk about next lifetime, in order to observe it into next lifetime, so this is where earlier on BT was asking the question. Some people, if they interpret it as multiple lifetime, spanning multiple lifetime kind of idea, then one may need to look into the different lifetimes, into the past lives, to understand this dependent origination. So for those who cannot see past life, or for majority of the people who cannot see past life, I wouldn't really recommend you to develop looking into past life first, especially for people who, let's say, haven't developed like any wisdom or any kind of stability of mind. If let's say you cannot even handle the dramas in this lifetime, the ups and downs in this lifetime, you easily get depressed or angry or upset over certain quarrels with certain people in this lifetime. Then you look into past life and you have multiplication, you have more problem. So I strongly recommend you handle this lifetime first. If you think you are very firm, then maybe you can attend, but it's not necessary to attend. I would say it's not necessary. Okay, then the next point, birth. Taking birth, it could be the physical birth. There's interesting term, descent, coming to be. So later on we talk about descent. So descent is something like a kind of mind or consciousness that goes into a womb. So later on, or I'm not sure, maybe the next lesson, I do not know whether it's time, we might discuss the comparison between the 3 lifetime model, those scriptures that that support this statement, and those scriptures that don't really support that model. Okay, so descent happens only in point 11. Birth is birth. It's not at the point of the nama rupa. Okay, so never mind. Coming forth, appearance of aggregates, acquisition of the sense media, beings in this or that group of beings, right? So you can take it literally, or you can take it as a mental one. So that's for point 11 and 12. Okay, then we move on to this point number 10, what is becoming, right? So then we talk about becoming. So there are three kinds of becoming: sensual becoming, form and formless becoming. So this is the definition of becoming. Okay, then clinging, and clinging is all kinds of clinging to sensuality, clinging to views, clinging to precepts and practice, clinging to doctrines, clinging of self. Any kind of clinging is called clinging. Yeah, so sensuality clinging means clinging to your sense doors, whatever you see, hear, smell, think, taste, and touch, then you cling onto it. Your favorite music, your favorite things you like daydream about. So that's kind of sensuality clinging. Right? Views, clinging to views. So again, like even Buddhist views, doctrinal views, right? Whether is it a 3 lifetime or 1 moment, if we cling onto it and we don't practice letting go, that is also clinging. That is also clinging. Huh? Okay, and clinging to self. Clinging to self, or other doctrines of self, clinging. Huh? So whatever teachings there may be, there's a universal self, there's no self, not self, non-self, so many ideologies in Buddhism. Whatever you believe, if you cling on to it, then that is also clinging, which results in suffering. If you talk about I believe in not self or non-self, then you go to a forum, and someone says I believe there's a self, and you start to quarrel, and that's called clinging. Clinging to doctrine of self. Okay, so this is called clinging. So it leads to stress and suffering. Huh? And what is craving? So there are 6 classes of craving. Craving for forms, sounds, smells, taste, tactile objects, tactile sensations, ideas. Huh? So it's called craving. So you crave for all the sense contact, sense objects. Okay, then what is feeling? So feeling again, wow, this one is more technical. All kinds of feelings through the senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. There's also feelings from there. And contact. So we talk about contact also from your eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. 6 sense media are the organs, right? So that's the media, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So there's a lots of 6 going on. Okay, name and form. Okay, so feeling, perception, intention, contact, and attention. This is called name. That's the mental aspect. The 4 great elements, earth, fire, wind, water. So that's the 4 elements. That's called form. Right, so that's called name and form. So that makes up of the 5 aggregates. And what is consciousness? So consciousness again, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind consciousness. So you need to take note of number 3. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind consciousness. So if you want to talk about the moment-to-moment observing of this dependent arising, then the definition of consciousness is this eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind consciousness. For those who believe in a 3 lifetime model, they'll talk about this consciousness entering into the womb, and that process is called name and form. So that is the 3 lifetime model explanation, which is different from this 6 sense basis consciousness. So it's a total different explanation altogether. So the consciousness here, what's the difference? The difference would be, earlier on we talked about how eye consciousness arises, right? Depending on your eye, dependent on the external object, eye consciousness arises. So when eye consciousness arises, you don't have to enter a womb. Like you don't have to pass away and enter a womb, right? So you're still alive. So this is how eye consciousness works. But if a person want to talk about the 3 lifetime model, then it doesn't work like this. This consciousness, they will give a different name. They call this rebirth linking consciousness. So this rebirth linking consciousness will enter this so-called this womb, and once the womb has life, then it has this name and form, and it has these six senses, stuff like that. So that's a total different direction. Okay, so but if you want to talk about meditation, you want to see it here and now, then we talk about every moment, whatever you see, hear, smell, think, and taste and touch. There's a rising of the eye consciousness, a rising of the ear consciousness, how it arises and passes away, how feelings arise and pass away, how craving arise and pass away. So we observe every moment. Okay, then number 2, fabrication. The definition would be bodily, verbal, and mental fabrication. So these are the 3 kinds of fabrication. And the number 1 would be ignorance, basically not knowing the Four Noble Truths. And not knowing the truth of stress, not knowing the origination of stress, not knowing the cessation of stress, not knowing the path leading to the cessation of stress. So that is ignorance. So some people think, yeah, I learned Four Noble Truths before, so that is only in theory. So what we are talking about here is experiential understanding. Experiential, that means to be able to experience and see for oneself. So only a fully enlightened person will understand the Four Noble Truths fully. So that is for ignorance. Okay, let me see. I think there are more questions in the chat. Okay, someone was asking, going into the past life is not necessary. Yeah, that's correct. Looking into past life is not necessary. There are many suttas that talk about it. There are many enlightened disciples of the Buddha who are unable to see past lives or did not develop this ability to see past lives. So they're enlightened, so they can't go wrong. Right, so it's not essential practice. On the contrary, there are many unenlightened beings who can see past lives, demons, ghosts, like in the, I think the Khuddaka Nikaya, there's these Peta Watu, stories of hungry ghosts. And these hungry ghosts can see past lives, can see their past life. They can even tell the monk, in the past life I've done something wrong, that's why I grow so ugly. So they can tell you their past life. So seeing past life may not result in detachment. So the middle way is the all the right understanding all the way to right concentration. Right, so it needs a lot of this right mindfulness, right effort, right thought. So if a person cannot see the past life, as long as they apply the Eightfold Path, they can achieve the liberation. And if a person can see past life, if they practice the Eightfold Path, they also can achieve liberation. So if a person who do not practice the Eightfold Path, and they go and look in the past life, one example would be if a person is not ready for it. One good example would be to know whether a person is suitable to look in the past life is to check your internet history, your internet search history. If your search history is full of rubbish, then I strongly suggest for you not to practice looking into past life. Right, because your intention and desire is to kepo and look into all the wrong things. Yeah, so it becomes, it's like the social media of the past. 2,500 years ago, no social media. So those yogis, or people, they will want to look into all these kind of things. Right, so these are the social media of the past. So I strongly don't recommend for those people. But if you're really very pure, your intention is very pure, you really do it for the compassion of all beings, you want to save many people, you want to look into problems of what's the past, how to resolve them, and stuff like that, then it's a different case. Yeah. So in the, if I'm not wrong, the Tibetan tradition, before a person does like any kind of initiation in any kind of deity or bodhisattva or kind of Buddha, kind of meditation practice to visualize, a certain object, they need to go through certain kind of purification. They need to do lots of confession, maybe thousands and thousands of prostration, recite certain mantras many thousands of times, is to purify their karma, make sure their intention is wholesome and correct. And if they ever take up this practice and develop any of these abilities, at least they use it for the right cause. So in Theravada Buddhism, we have a problem with some of the schools will tell the yogis, okay, visualize things straight away, visualize white light, visualize this, visualize that for many hours. And some people, if they do see things, it can be a divine eye or look in the past life, whatever it is, most people will end up being sidetracked. The intention is not so wholesome, so it won't help them that much. So hopefully that answers the question. So next question, could you explain a bit more on name and form, especially the components of name? Okay, so let me go back to the past slide. Okay, so name and form is basically the another way of segregating the 5 aggregates. So total 5 aggregates. There's form, feeling, perception, mental formation, consciousness. So form will be the first aggregate. Then the rest, feeling, perception, mental formation, consciousness would be the other 4 aggregates will be classified as nama, name. But down here they have this feeling, perception, intention, contact, and attention. Very interesting. So attention is basically your consciousness. Attention, your awareness. When you're aware of something, your attention is there. So when you have eye consciousness, this eye consciousness, you're paying attention with your eyes. So contact and attention is like as though together. It's like as though together. So when you're paying attention, if your nose, you smell something, so that's your nose consciousness. So you're aware. So it's quite close actually. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. Then another question, how about certain lineage, school of looking into the past life, there must be a process to attain jhana. Is that mean not following, right? Is that mean this is not the right path to follow? I won't say not the right path to follow. I would say that is the longer path to follow, longer route to take. In fact, jhanas is different from visualization, and visualization may not necessarily be jhanas. So again, this is a very long topic. I won't talk about it. A person may have all these so-called all the levels of concentration. One good example is like Venerable Sariputta. He attained all the levels of concentration. You can look up at the Anupada Sutta. The Buddha praised Venerable Sariputta for attaining all the jhanas, but he doesn't have the divine eye. Somehow he cannot see the devas. So one good example is the Junha Sutta, where he's meditating in a cave with Venerable Moggallana, the other arahant who can have the divine eye, the monk foremost in psychic power, Venerable Moggallana. So these certain yaka or devas start to attack or hit Venerable Sariputta in the head and run off. Then only Venerable Moggallana saw what happened, and Venerable Sariputta was unable to see what happened. So that's the story of the sutta, Junha Sutta, Junha, Junha Sutta. Okay, so that's the question. All right, so I'll talk about it next time. Okay, so I'll carry on with this dependent origination. Okay, so basically this is the definition of all the 12 links. So I kind of roughly talk about all the 12 links. Let me do a time check. We're still early. So the talk ends at what time? 9:30, is it?
It's 9:30 thereabout.
Yeah, 9:30. Yeah, so I can carry on. Okay, so in practice, so this is like there are many examples. So I just give one example called the Loka Sutta. Yeah, the world. So this is like introduction of the beginning, the sutta. Blessed One was addressed the monks. I will teach you the origination of the world and the ending of the world. So this is not some doomsday Armageddon kind of teaching. Again, it's a metaphorical. So when the Buddha talks about origination and ending of the world, it's a metaphor. So likewise, when we talk about birth and death, it can also be a metaphor. Right? Depends on how you interpret, how you apply to practice. So listen and pay close attention. Right? So the Buddha is going to talk about, again, the same 12 things, origination of the world. So this time, it starts off with a very different starting point. So the starting point would be like this. Dependent on the I and forms arises I consciousness. So this is how we talk about the how I consciousness arises earlier on. Then the next one, the meeting of the three is contact. From contact, requisite condition comes feeling, and so on and so forth. So the rest is the same. Feeling comes craving, then you have this clinging, then from clinging you have becoming, then you have birth, then birth you have all this aging, sickness and death and all the suffering. So this is the forward order, but starting from our normal day-to-day activities, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. So this is depending on your senses, you have contact, and then you have all these things. So this is how we perceive the world. So the world arises, or our opinion of the world arises depending on these things, depending on, after seeing, then you have all these attachment to the views of the world. When we have attachment, we take a position, then we have, when we defend the position, we have suffering. All right, so this is how the world comes about. So now we talk about ending of the world. So this is not Armageddon. So ending of the world, same thing. The starting point also the same, very interesting. Depending on I and forms arises I consciousness, same process, same as before. Meeting of the three is contact. You can't do anything about it, it's natural. Then you have feeling, which is natural, and comes craving. So the one you should change is the one in yellow. So I highlighted in yellow. So from the remainderless cessation and fading away of the craving comes a cessation of clinging. So in practice, you can't do anything about what you see, what you see, hear, smell, think, taste, and touch. You can't do anything about it. You avert your sight to somewhere else, you see something else. So you cannot do anything about it. You cannot do anything with your senses. So these are reflex action. So the only thing which you can do something about is your craving. So that's in line with the Four Noble Truths. You want to end craving, you need to work reducing craving. Okay, so with cessation of the craving, you see it's clinging, you see it's becoming, then you see it's birth, aging, sickness, and death. So that's how you seize the clinging of this so-called the world. So this is not how the world ends. It's not that once you practice ending of craving, the world will explode or something. No. This is how you transcend the world. So in Buddhism, we always talk about crossing the other shore. So if a person starts overcoming craving, you're abandoning this world. You're abandoning this clinging to these suffering, these dramas and stories you hold dear, and you go to a peaceful place in the mind. So this is the cessation of the world, ending of the world. Okay, so this is in practice. So I'm going to introduce another kind of practice. So this one can be done every moment. Even right now when you're listening to me, you're using all your sense doors, right? Your eye, you're using your ears mainly. And of course, if you're feeling your seat, and that is your body sense door. So mainly, all these sense contact is there. And the thing is, how to seize this craving? That's the question, right? How to seize. So in theory, very easy. You seize craving, no, and craving, right? But in practice, when we talk about craving, we have mostly either greed or hatred. So normally in my routine, I would say we use loving kindness to overcome anger. So you can try this first. Whatever you see, hear, smell, think, taste, and touch, you wish them well and happy. So this is to overcome this aversion, the craving of aversion. And when you do this, actually there's a bit of clinging. You create a wholesome kind of clinging, but at least you reduce certain craving. And once you continue to do that long enough, when the mind is rather peaceful, then you can reflect on impermanence. So impermanence is to overcome greed and clinging, greed and attachment. So this is in line with the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, right? Mindfulness, the four foundations of mindfulness. Mindful of impermanence is the way to overcome greed and clinging to the world. Yeah, so this is the way to overcome or rather seize this craving. So why you do loving kindness first? If we straight away start off with impermanence, there might be a problem. If the mind is not ready, you start to think of, okay, one day I'll grow old, one day I will, my hair will fall off, my hair will turn white, or my skin will wrinkle. And the mind may not be ready to accept. You straight away think of impermanence, and you start to worry. I start to grow old, will I have enough savings or not? If my skin start to wrinkle, how to look after the skin, what kind of beauty product to buy and apply on the skin. So this is not being prepared when the mind is not ready. So when the mind is more settled, more calm with loving kindness, then think of impermanence is more ready, you're more ready to accept, more ready to accept the truth. It's just like any kind of diplomacy or conversation. Let's say any maybe a politician goes overseas to have some kind of discussion, to sign some agreements. The first thing they land on the other country, they won't bring them down to the office and start the discussion straight away. They straight away maybe have a bit of informal chit chat, then maybe have some sightseeing, have some meal. Make them happy first. Once they're happy, then they're more ready to sign. Right, so this is applicable even in your workplace, to your family members, to your friends. You don't straight away discuss heavy issues, right? You maybe buy them lunch or something. Then once they're happy, then you can start discussion. All right, so this is loving kindness, followed by impermanence. Okay, so the other method, when we talk about ceasing craving, the other method is using deeper kind of concentration. So this one you can find in the Buddha's account. During the first week of enlightenment, the Buddha was praising jhanas. Yeah. So the Buddha contemplated this dependent rising in a forward and reverse order. And while doing so, then he was thinking, as phenomena grow clear to the Brahman, that means to the practitioner, ardent in jhana, in concentration, his doubts will all vanish, right, when he discerns a phenomenon with its causes. So earlier on we talked about form and formless becoming. So in jhana can reach clinging. So how come the Buddha say, no, in jhana then you can discern this phenomena. So you need to understand the context. So when the Buddha talk about jhana, he's talking about all the jhanas. The Buddha is able to systematically do all the jhanas from the first jhana all the way to the 8th jhana, the highest jhana, followed by cessation. And he did the reverse order from cessation all the way to the first jhana, then from first jhana all the way to cessation. So that's why he's able to understand the various kinds of clinging and unclinging from the different kinds of becoming. Yeah? So this is the other method of doing it. If a person has trained in the jhanas, not many people are trained in the jhanas, so you just appreciate this will do. Huh? Okay, so another way to look at it, at this jhana thing, there are 3 elements of escape. So again, we talk about the desire becoming, form and formless becoming, right? So why are we attached to sense pleasure? Because we do not experience higher kinds of happiness. We depend on maybe, I don't know, maybe money to make us happy, maybe, I don't know, whatever our hobbies that is, to make us happy. It can be wholesome or unwholesome kinds of habits or hobbies to make us happy. So to escape from a sensual desire, a person needs to renounce this sensual desire. So when a person renounce the sensual pleasure, they will sort of enter these form concentrations. So you can refer this to the Tapusa Sutta, Tapussa. Okay, so from the form concentration, you want to escape this addiction to form concentration, you need to enter a higher kind of peace and happiness. So that is the formless concentration. So to escape the formless concentration, you need to enter cessation, which is nibbana. So a person, if let's say a person has a glimpse of the truth, maybe a stream enterer, or all the way to the fully enlightened person, they've experienced this cessation, then they will have a higher kind of happiness. They will slowly not cling to this form and formless becoming. So these are the 3 elements of escape. So how does this work? Okay, so these are all the different kinds of concentration. So if you look at the bottom one, right, first, second, third, fourth jhana, very straightforward. So the 5th onwards have ridiculous sounding names. So the 5th one has this thing called the infinite of space. The 6th one has the infinite of consciousness. Number 7, realm of nothingness. And number 8, neither perception nor non-perception, right? Sound very profound and you have no idea what it is. Okay, so only if a person reach these states of mind, then they can sort of enjoy the peace. So beyond that, beyond this, okay, so the first 4, 1 to 4 is called the form concentrations. Number 5 to number 8 is called the formless concentrations. So if a person wants to escape form becoming and formless becoming, they need to attain nibbana, something higher, outside of the formless concentration. So if a person is trained to know how to let go of these, enter this, let go, they do the same process. Number 8, they let go, they will reach this number 9. To make it simple, we call it number 9. So, but the standard term is called cessation or nibbana. So once a person reaches nibbana, they have the highest happiness, highest state of peace. Then they won't rely on, or they won't be addicted to this. So the mind will be addicted to this highest kind of happiness. But in a way, it is not addiction because it's not craving. It is due to the lack of craving. When they let go, then they have the highest. So to play safe, they can do the same. They can try to reflect on impermanence. They try to let go further, there's no more further to let go or no more further learning, then that's the highest. So it's a scientific way actually. So a person can test themselves, can they let go further, can they detach further? If there's no more further to detach, then that's the highest. So it's ongoing process of research, ongoing process of introspection and kind of troubleshooting. Okay, so I shall end here for the moment. I leave the floor open to Q&A. So I stop share and have some time for Q&A, questions and answers, even though there's already questions and answers, because the next session will be more theoretical. It's a kind of comparative study between the 3 lifetime model or the every thought moment model. What does the other suttas say? Are there references? Which one do the suttas prefer? And stuff like that. Okay, so any questions?
Ante, can I ask something?
Yes.
It's about the origination of the world, that slide, right? Actually, can I ask about like the real origination? Because I was talking to my boss, and then like then he's a Christian, so he's telling me about like his beliefs and everything. Then I got a bit stuck because I didn't really know. I feel like Buddhism always tells us about the poison arrow, right? Oh, you get shot.
Yeah.
You're supposed to think about how to remove the arrow and not think about
correct.
where the arrow comes from.
Yeah.
So I was trying to explain that, actually in Buddhism it's more of we know what are the problems that we have now and we try to resolve them. Yeah. And then I don't know, I just felt like I couldn't really like address, because he was saying like, his point was like, there's our bodies are like evidence, something along the lines of like there being like some form of creation, that kind. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I heard of this before, but I feel like I didn't really know how to answer that. But my point was more of like explaining what I understand about what Buddhism is about. So is there a explanation that we can give for like origination of the world, or not really?
Yeah, so
Okay,
there
thank you.
is always mundane and a supramundane explanation. So the Buddha, out of compassion, normally will not entertain these kinds of questions, like the physical kind of appearance of the world. Is not so keen into answering, because whatever you believe, it won't lead to the end of suffering. So it's not really keen to answer. But interestingly, there is a particular sutta called the Aganya Sutta. Aganya Sutta, which talks about the formation of the world, at least for this particular eon. But of course, there are countless eons. So there are, if I'm not wrong, the Buddha could recall more than 90 over eons of his past. So one eon is like one world cycle, one universe cycle. So somehow, whatever you believe, even if you believe there's infinite cycles of the world, if a person is still has greed and hatred, then that is still not the true right view. That is still not the true right view. But anyway, I'm going to give my personal opinion on this. Whatever the creation theory may be, the Buddhist theory somehow is not in line with Darwin's theory of evolution also. The Buddhist, this Aganya Sutta, not in line with this Darwin's theory of evolution. So in this line, there might be some commonality with other religions. When we talk about creationism, there might be something in common. So we can gang up against science, but never mind. When I was studying biology in secondary school, I was taking O-level biology. So last time there's this chapter on evolution. Yeah, so there's this chapter on evolution. So at that time, as a secondary school kid, we were watching this X-Men cartoon. Or that time there was this X-Men movie. I think Hugh Jackman was the Wolverine or something. So we were talking about mutants. Yeah, so we were asking the school teacher, could humans evolve to be mutants? Could humans shoot laser beams from their eyes and evolve to something more superior or something like that? Then you guess what my biology teacher replied? A mutation is very dangerous. 99.999% of the time, mutation is cancerous. And if you mutate, you die. So that's a big contradiction in evolution. So for example, a small fish will always remain a small fish. But if you want to talk about the origination, right, of the world, normally we are given a picture like a small microorganism. They start to grow big and become another species. And you grow big into a fish, you grow big into, some reptilian, and you grow big into like a mammal and grow big into like a human and stuff like that. So it kind of gives the impression that we can mutate and transform into another species, which is contradicting Darwin's theory of evolution. And contradicting the survival of fittest theory. So the other thing we learned was this, the survival of fittest in evolution is like the example of the butterfly. The white butterfly and the black butterfly in two different kinds of environment. One is a smoky kind of environment, one is in a snowy kind of environment. So the black butterfly will survive in a smoky kind of environment because they can camouflage in the dust. Whereas the black butterfly won't survive in the snowy environment, because he cannot camouflage in the snow, something like that, right? So that's the theory of evolution in terms of survival of fitness. But the butterfly is still a butterfly. It won't butterfly won't change into a bird or something, right? So that's the contradiction. So if there is a mutation, it changes to something else, then they tell, oh, okay, mutation is cancerous. So that's the only issue with Darwin's theory of evolution. But I won't totally deny this Darwin's theory of evolution. What is not being presented is, according to the creationist theory, the creationist camp or the intelligent design, there's a whole spectrum of beliefs also. You may not totally agree with somebody came along and created everything, right? Some nowadays I've been watching Ancient Aliens and whatever not. So there may be whoever, intervention or interference, maybe crossbreeding with some higher other species, or somebody or some higher species may have tinkled, genetic engineered with the genetics or whatever it is. So I keep an open mind. In the suttas, we talk about humans have ever lived to thousands of years old. Like our historical Buddha comes in a human era when humans are about 100 years old or so. The previous Buddha coming around when humans were thousands of years old. So that is so against this Darwin's theory of evolution. So in a way, we are kind of in the Buddhist teaching, we are degenerating. So I still keep an open mind. The more facts or evidence we have, then I just take it. Yeah. So this is my personal take. But in terms of supramundane teaching, whatever you believe, if we still have greed and hatred, then that's a wrong view. So even if it's scientifically correct, and you try to defend the science, and you get angry over it, or you still have greed, then that's still not the right view, not the kind of Dhamma we want. So earlier on we chanted the 6 qualities of the Dhamma. That Dhamma should be leading inward, leading to inner peace, leading to inner calm. So that's the kind of Dhamma we want. So So there are many, many kinds of dhammas. So the mundane kind of dhammas, not so important, but good to know. Maybe for if let's say it's an occupational issue, maybe good to know. But supra mundane, right, leads to inner contentment and peace. Then may not be so necessary. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bante. So
No
the
problem.
Buddhist understanding is from the sutta. I think there's this sutta where like how humans came about. I think so.
Yeah, it's
So
in
that's
the
our
Aganya Sutta.
that's okay. Thank you. I can't
Okay,
remember,
no
but I
problem.
think it's like something like feeding on. Okay, never mind. Thank you. Sadhu.
Okay, all right. Okay, so somebody asked the method one, yeah, that means every moment when you see, hear, smell, think, and taste and touch. Okay, an untrained mind, if let's say we do not apply the Noble Eightfold Path, we do not apply right thought, we do not apply right effort, right mindfulness, then what will happen is the the mind will naturally cling to the next strongest emotion, next strongest sensation. So we call these the five hindrances. Either greed, anger, it could be restlessness, thoughts of fantasies, thoughts of worry, thoughts of drowsiness, tiredness, the mind will cling onto that, thoughts of doubt, right? Anything that can cling, the mind will cling. So that's the basic idea. Okay, so to overcome this clinging and becoming, the only way is every moment we need to be mindful of this right thought. So there are many Buddhist schools. Some would say be mindful of the Buddha's name or the Buddha's quality the whole day. So you're starting the practice. Every moment you're generating this right thought to overcome certain kind of craving. And over time, then you add the reflection of impermanence. Then this will add the detachment.
So to clarify, is it about being mindful? Because you said the idea of like being mindful of the Buddha's qualities, but could it be like being mindful of the defilements you have? Is that what you're trying to say? I'm not sure.
Not being mindful of defilements, as in the mind should generate any kind of right reflection to overcome craving. So there are so many types of meditation objects which can constitute right reflection. So if a person, let's say, is atheist, they believe not in the creationist kind of point of view, they can have right reflection on their generosity, on their good deeds. Any kind of reflection that can reduce certain unwholesome kind of craving. So they start off from there.
Could you give, because I may not know much, could you give an example of what is a right reflection? Yeah.
Okay. Earlier on we talked about craving, right? Is either greed or hatred. So basically, right thought means the opposite of craving, either non-greed or non-hatred. So anything like can be loving kindness overcome hatred, can be compassion overcome hatred, thoughts of rejoicing, thoughts of doing generosity, right? So all these can overcome this greed and hatred.
So something like doing loving kindness to develop non-hatred.
Yeah. Yeah, that helps. Yeah. But eventually, right, one must develop the reflection of impermanence. So the like loving kindness and all those is more like a warm up to strengthen the mind. Once it's ready, then you can reflect on impermanence.
Then for greed, it will be the way to develop non-greed would be to just reflect on impermanence, right? From what you said just now.
Yeah, that's the eventual part. If let's say a person starts off with a very greedy mind, very selfish, very greedy, maybe very lustful, then there are many other themes that things like impurities of the body meditation, reflection on the the human biology and anatomy, the four elements, stuff like that. So these are certain meditations that can overcome strong desire, strong greed.
Oh, okay. Can understand. Thank
Yep.
you, Bante.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, there are multiple questions. For young Buddhists, adolescents, what kind of teaching would you suggest? Mostly stories, tell stories, and Buddha's life stories, maybe some Jataka tales. Start off with that, yeah? Something relatable to them. So there are Buddhist like preschools, yeah? Buddhist preschools. So you can look them up. I think a lot of temples have like Sunday schools for primary school children. So those also can help. But most of the time, because initially when the Buddha was around, his emphasis or his priority was teaching monastics. Try to teach Dhamma to people with little dust in their eyes. So he's not like opening like Sunday school for children and stuff like that. So there are very little teachings, for lay persons. Most of the teachings are like for meditators, yeah, for monks or for meditators. For layperson, not that much. So when Buddhism spread along the way, some countries become Buddhist countries. So they try to like bao ka liao, try to oversee the education of children, try to use Buddhist principles to teach children. Then they have problem because Buddhist teachings not too detailed. Because in the Buddha's time, they let the predominant religion to let the person have the foundation, or maybe Brahmanism or Hinduism, how to be a good person as a layperson, how to be a good person in general. So these are like the basics, very fundamental stuff which the other mainstream religions have lots of teachings in technical, in detail, but in Buddhism not that much, very general, very not so specific. So most of the Buddhist countries, or at least Buddhist countries, they will incorporate other philosophies. Yeah. Probably maybe they add Confucianism in China, right? They add some other stuff inside also. Like if I'm not wrong, when I was teaching in Gongming San as a Sunday school teacher last time, they add 弟子规 add 弟子规 to teach the kids. So there's some moral values for the children. So these are the essential stuff to cultivate moral character as a child. So yeah, some important values. Okay, anyone else? Any questions?
Cheryl, would
Okay,
you like to
so
ask
Hi,
a question?
Bunty.
yeah,
Yeah, right. Further elaboration earlier on the question. So let's say if I would like to send loving kindness to Li Hui. Okay, so in order not to slant to one side, so I wish may she be well and happy, may she be free from suffering. But it's not that I want to get anything in return, just wish that she'll have a nice day. Is this the way to go? Because you mentioned about not being slanted on a person, or let's say I were to send it to my grandmother. Is this the correct approach?
Yeah, so this would be more like daily interactions, then you might want to do this. But in the original suttas, one good way is to, for me, I would use the suttas instruction would be to wish all beings well and happy. So once you have a more boundless or unconditional kind of loving kindness, and you keep on generating repeatedly all the time, wishing all beings well and happy, and keep repeating, you get a certain kind of emotion, which is very different from just wishing one person. Yeah. So if you wish one person, there may be certain connotations or strings attached, and you get a different kind of emotion. Yeah, so for foundation-wise, I would encourage people to maybe spend more time wishing all beings well and happy. But in your daily interaction, you need to maybe, let's say you meet with Li Hui or meet with someone else, your parents. You focus on one person, then you need to wish that one person well and happy. Then at least there's a comparison. If you straight away start off only wishing one person well and happy, then sometimes a bit hard to get out. Yeah. Very hard to get out. Then you start to think that would be the benchmark for loving kindness only.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so there's another comment. Yeah, I wish exposed to impermanence at a very young age depends on what kind of teaching. Normally we don't expose those very gross or gruesome kind of impermanence to the child. Don't think of the corpse, think of death and stuff like that. Impermanence as in, there's rain and shine, changing the weather, changing day and night, something more relatable, yeah. But for now, for the audience here, what kind of impermanence we look for is the every moment change in your attention, change in the 5 aggregates. Yeah? When you change in your aggregates, right? You change your attention. Then you can ask yourself: is the feelings the same all the time? Are the sensation, the 4 elements, the same all the time? So the 4 elements: earth, fire, wind, water. We would tend to classify the earth element as the sensations of hard and soft sensation. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just the biological anatomy of the body. Things like heat, fire element, you cannot identify in parts of the body. It can be external kind of heat as well. Yeah, so that's the fire element, hot and cold. Wind element, fast and slow movements, all kinds of movements. The moving of your attention, that would constitute the wind element. The water element, any moist or dry sensation. So these are the 4 elements. Yeah? So normally we start off with the form aggregate, 4 elements to locate your nama rupa, locate the mind and matter. Because when the elements are there, your attention is there. It's a bit like your GPS, your tracking device. So if you want to locate where is your attention, then you look out for the sensation, these 4 elements. It doesn't necessarily have to be inside your body, it can be outside. So wherever your attention is, the 5 aggregates will be there. So we start off with the form, then we slowly move on to the feelings. Do you find the sensations pleasant all the time, or is it changing? Is it too much tension, too hard, too soft, too hot, too cold, stuff like that. And you can look out for the impermanence of the feelings, look out for impermanence of the perception. Perception is basically the labeling. Why do you call it earth element? No, why do you call this TV screen? Why do you call this blue color? Why do you call this red color? So all these are perception. So this is called all the labeling, perception. Some people call it memory, and because you have certain memory impression of it in the past, then you will give it a label. So that's for perception. Then mental formation is the basically the moment the thought is formed. So that is mental formation. how these maybe the sensations are formed, the earth element is formed, how the fire element is formed every time a new sensation appears. So this is new formations, new fabrication. So there are physical fabrications involved, there's also mental fabrications involved. When you pay attention to the new sensation, that is mental formation. When a new sensation is formed or the formations are changing, the physical sensations are changing, then this is new bodily fabrications. Yeah, so it's a bit like they are related, yeah, they're all together. Then we have the fifth aggregate, which is consciousness or attention. So you pay attention with our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind. So hopefully that kinds of take away the, at least you have some takeaway, you know how to practice. So it's not just about you listening to me talking for one second. Oh yeah, this teacher, whatever you say, yeah, makes sense. You need to investigate every moment. Investigate every moment. Your eyes are working. You know, every moment your ears are working. So every moment there's these 5 aggregates moving around through the sense doors. So you need to investigate. Once you stop investigating only, then the mind will cling. It's either you have skillful thinking or unskillful thinking. If you have skillful thinking, that means you're generating right thought. Either you're thinking of the impermanence or you're thinking of any of the meditation themes, that is to create a wholesome state of mind.